we begin by choosing our position in front of the still life. We have grids that we have in our mind that we hold up in front of the still life so that we can see them. I've got an overhead view. Hopefully you'll be able to see me, but I'm going to be using an eraser shield, my white eraser, and a few Druid pencils. I'm going to start out with one of the harder pencils so that I have a lighter line. I'll start out with my 4H, and as I begin, I'm just going to draw a couple of quick lines to get the entire composition down on my page. I do this. This is a way to keep from running off the page in any given direction. So I'm going to just draw a couple of quick lines to get my composition in the way that I want. And then I'll start to chop out some of the shapes that I see. And I'm in my peripheral, I'm using my a lot of perspective right now. I'll measure with my pencil. Make sure that I've got my lines in, start to establish a couple of shapes. There's a, see some of this over here. Just to bring it up a little bit. And now the pencil's probably very, very light. I'm not even sure that you guys can see it at home on the video. But the pencil is very, very light. And that's done intentionally so that I can come back and make darker marks over top of my light marks. So I've just got it all roughed in very quickly with my my 4H. Once I've got it sketched in quickly with my 4H, I can move up to my 2H. It's going to make a little bit of a darker line. So with my 2H, I'm going to go ahead and so now switching over to my number 2H pencil. I'm starting to look at the negative shapes, the shapes between the shapes, between the subject, all the dark values that I have, and I'll start to bring them up a little bit, start to bring in my one of the things that you'll notice is that I don't talk while I draw. It's kind of a separation between my mind and my pencil. Here's some contouring. Contouring, bringing back in the negative space to see how is each shape going to be. Here's one of my cylinders. An eyelash. It's one of my cylinders. Paying attention to which way the trim disappears behind the regular circle. Now I'm going to look and measure with my pencil to see how far below the other object is the one piece of the candelabra. I'll draw that in, start to pay attention to my details. I'm already seeing where I'm going to be able to come back and put in some lovely highlights. This is one of the shapes as this candelabra comes towards me, it projects towards me, is one of the more difficult lines to get down correctly. And what we want to do is look at the negative space around each object, fill in the negative space around that object in order to show me that object. Again, I'm going to measure to see across to see where does my line intersect here. Just as I went to compare, I closed one eye, used my strong eye, and went to see where does this in my horizontal lines, you know, that I have as an artist in my mind. I'm always looking at things and comparing things as if they were on a grid. So in my horizontal mind, where does each one fit and how does it work? And of course, a couple of the easy lines are going to be the drop lines. So it's nice to get in some drop lines. If I can't see exactly where the how far down the reflections go or the object itself goes, I'm going to use the reflections and see how long the object is. So what I did was I looked at the reflections and I contoured in some of the negative space in the reflections so that I could tell how far down the candelabra was going to be. The other way to do it is to measure with your pencil. Hold your pencil up, measure, and compare it to say the top, and I can see that it's about 3/4 the same as the top, and the top is 3/4. So yep, I'm pretty close in. What I did was I held my pencil up and I measured, and then I measured against the same object or another object in it and compared like measurements. It's all relative to where each one's going to be. So I chose the relative measurement. Again, negative space in the basket. I can pull out one of my shapes here. This is going to be one of my darker shapes. So all that work that I did with my 4H is now giving me guidelines where to be with my 2H. And I can start to shade in the shapes. See how I've just pulled out a shape here. And that shape will be filled in with some darkness, some good darkness. So for now, that's showing me where my shape is. Here's the pepper. Draw the pepper in, get that potato on. And the corn. And I know that people that have taken my classes with me are familiar with the fact that we count keys on computers and typewriters, we count keys on jukebox machines, we count teeth, and we count kernels of corn. So we will go ahead and we will see, just for reference, how many kernels of corn are going to be across here. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22. So halfway up is about 22 kernels of corn. See if I can get them small enough in here to make it look like I'm going to get 22 kernels in here. Yeah, that's about right. So just giving myself a guideline as to where those kernels are going to be. Looking again for the shapes up in the objects themselves. Down in here there's going to be some good highlights. I'm going to be working with some real good darks in here. Picking out some of the negative shapes. Draw my line across so that I know where my details are going to land. And then the bottom of the champagne bucket is ribbed. I get the second half, and then down here there are some details on the bottom of the champagne bucket, and a bunch of grapes. Now, I'm fortunate enough, I know what grape leaves look like. I've got grapes growing in the backyard, so I've drawn grapes a number of times. So to contour that grape leaf for me was pretty easy. It might be, don't get discouraged if you're having any difficulty with it. Keep on trying and keep on looking. You know, use your strong eye to take a look at it and really see what it is that's there, because you want to, as an artist, show your viewer what you see. That's the entire idea as an artist, is to be able to transform your viewer into the spot where you were. Now here on the champagne bottle, there's a lot of reflections. So again, I'm looking at my reflections to see just how far over I'm going to end up being. And yep, here was the edge of my bucket, and I've checked it by adding some of the reflections in to see that I was able to go from what I see as the reflection as my page in the book, my left page in the book. Here's my hand and some articles behind me on the wall, some framed items, and I can see all that in the reflection. So that's another way to check the girth of what I'm drawing. I'm going to come around here. I'm going to look for my shapes. Inside of shapes, there's going to be some reflections up in here. And again, we're looking at shapes. We're making little shapes out of bigger shapes. Here's the wine bottle. I might not get that whole wine bottle in, but it's going to be close. Let's see. Here's that shape of the label, some highlights, and my bottle ends here. So here's this, some highlights, my bottle ends here, and you'll actually maybe not be able to tell whether it's a champagne or, well, maybe you will be able to tell it's a wine bottle. Should be a champagne bottle, but it's a wine bottle. So try not to move while I'm drawing. Keep my eyes in the same position. Get a look at what I'm drawing. Double check my measurements. See if that's right and that's wrong. This has got to be the same as the other side. Let's see, here's my negative space. This is going to be here. This is all going to be shadow. This is going to be down here, like that. So now I can take my eraser and clean up some of my marks. The 99 rule, 99 line rule. You got to draw about 100 lines and erase 99 of them. Just choose the right one. Just choose one of them. So now I'll move to my HB pencil, and we'll take a look at this. See how far we've gotten. So now, switching to my HB, double checking all my lines, getting a good look at my page. You know, I'll hold it up and I'll look at it, and I'll make sure that everything looks like it's in proportion. Double check my proportions now. This is where I want to check my proportions. I don't want to wait until I'm all the way down the road making some super dark lines and have to erase. This is the point where you want to erase. So right now I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna just chop out some shapes and give them the right value. Again, the value scale is that black, very dark, dark, medium, light, very light, and white. So you've got 7 different values to choose from. And if you're not sure what value you're seeing, squint. Now this pencil's probably not going to get as dark as I need the darkness to be, but the idea is to lay down a little bit at a time so you can build it up. You know, once you get a good edge, once you get around to the details, you'll start to see the edges, and you can bring that value right up to the edge with minimal pencil marks, lines. Again, just working back over the details. Finding some of the values, starting to see more and more detail in the very highly reflected champagne container. So I have to start to decide how much of that detail am I going to leave out. You know, how much am I going to make just a hint of what's going on, and how much of it can I completely leave out. Since we are working directly with the shadow box, our light is very dramatic and our darks are very dark. But I can still be sure to show the viewer my light source. I always want to be sure that I'm showing the viewer my light source. So as I move away from the light, the light's here on the left side. Things are darker on the right side as you move away from the light, and you know that from your lessons where we've learned to draw different shapes and where to put the shadows of the shape on each object. That's where we practice drawing simple shapes over and over again, so that we can, when we get to this, it's second nature, that we know that if this is my potato, this is my shadow, and I can shade my potato in. Just because I know my light source is over here. Just like when we were drawing eggs, the first day of class, we were drawing eggs. Much the same thing with any sphere, you will get that same shadow, much like the onion here. I'll start to look at some of the texture inside the basket. See this shape down here where it gets too dark to include that detail. I might go on and exclude details later as the pencil gets darker. I might include some details, particularly fine lines as it gets darker. Here's that pepper starting to take form. And there's another onion under that pepper before we get to that dreaded corn that we're going to end up counting all the kernels. Get my shadow in. and that's just a shape. See, that shadow is just a shape, just like everything else. It might not be a sphere or a circle or a square exactly, but it's just a shape. Now I've moved over here to my candelabra where I want to get in some more of the detail before I move on to my next pencil. And again, this is an exercise here of having to draw what you see and not what you know. I've said over and over again, if you get stuck, try to just look at the object, observe, make observations, and then draw what you see. Forget what you know, because it might be leading you in the wrong direction. And hopefully that'll mean something to you throughout your entire art career. As you draw things and you get stuck, you'll say, "Oh yeah, Vissari used to say, draw what I see, forget everything I know," and it helps. It's one of the statements that I've kept with me throughout my entire drawing career. Now here again on the candelabra is a difficult shape. It's got a bend in it, and it recedes as it is seen. So I'm going to come up here, draw in some more of the details, see if I'm getting some of my details right before I start putting in some of the serious darkness behind the subjects. Watch my level. Again, I know my candelabra's in order in line. It's going straight up and down. It's got that perfect horizontal. These horizontals here that we work with, I can use those to help develop my drawing and know that my drawing is going in the right direction. Here again, the light source. I can't see inside that little dip. Making sure all my horizontals are horizontal and my verticals are vertical. Keeps my drawing straight. Then I can see that this is a shape. It's just a shape on the side of the candelabra. Reminds me of the movie Beauty and the Beast, right? The candelabra. Okay, so I've added some more details. I'm gonna see what kind of shadows I can put in down here. I'll add a little drapery. And that, I'm doing that so that I don't have to add complete darkness over the entire thing. But I am going to have to work in a lot of darkness all behind my objects. So now that I've got my contour in, the outline of my objects, I can bring my blackness, or some decent darkness, at least a hint of darkness, behind my objects with my shading. And again, this is just with my HB, so I can use some of it to I can use it and build up some good value. And I'm doing it rather quickly, but you should try to do it so that you don't see any of the lines. And then again, the 100 line, the 99 line technique. This is a lot of the lines that were here earlier with the 4H, particularly the 4H, but again, the 2H is being covered up. The mark with the 2H is being covered up, and any mark that I would have previously erased, you may have noticed I haven't used my eraser a whole lot. And using this technique with graduating the pencils, you won't have to use your eraser a lot, hopefully. Do need to get that in there. Little more, little more, little more. And my next pencil, my 2B, is a pretty good dark pencil. I like the 2B. I can use it to do a lot of stuff, and I'll be able to use that to again bring the contour out from behind. If I lose the contour in any of this shadow that I'm putting in here. And maybe you don't need to bring the shadow all the way up to the top in some places, you know, just let it fade out. But in spots opposite the light source, you're probably going to end up with some really, really good darks. And these are our really great dramatic darks. And that whole area right there that I just put a contour around, that whole area will be in darkness. And then I'll look again, and it seems that this area here, because of the breadbasket, the breadbasket's going to come down here. It's got some depth to it. And then all of this is also in shadow. You can see back here underneath the as the champagne holder has met the tablecloth, and here as we can see the reveal for the bread basket. So I'll just very quickly get some value across this. Bring the shadow out. And I'll keep working on that, and then I'll go ahead and bring out my 2B. So by now we should have everything pretty straight. I'm taking out my 2B. Everything's looking pretty good. I've shaded up my my space down here. Now the thing with the 2B is that this is where the lines start to really get dark. I'll try to get in some of the details. Pick out some further shadows and lightness. See, that's just a shape. Then I'm going to go ahead and fill that in. Now the 2B is pretty dark, but this working in with a shadow box, and you get these super darks. You're able to work on this type of an arrangement with charcoal if you really want to. If you want to switch to charcoal on another paper, this is also a way to work this composition. These are just some of the highlights in the bottle. I'm going over, checking my darks away from the light. More highlights. You see how dark that gets? Now we're working on 90 weight paper, and it has some tooth to it, not a whole lot. The graphite pencils, the harder pencils, will not show so much texture. If you're using a charcoal pencil, I don't particularly care for the charcoal pencils. I like a good graphite pencil. The charcoal pencils have a tendency to just get too dark and pile up a lot of graphite where I don't use that much graphite, and it creates a mess. So I don't like to use it. So here I am with my number 2. I'm looking very closely at the rim, and I can see that the rim is really not nearly as thick as I had it. I see some shadows, some reflections up here in the rim. And the rim's up here. And that works out well. I can put in some detail around the rim. Darkness back around this rim, real dark. Start to put some value back in here. And I don't have to make it black to begin with. You know, I can start with it just whisper, kind of a whisper of a shadow. Got to be careful here because I haven't left enough room for my basket. And then with my pencil very sharp, I'm getting some contour lines in here. But at the same time, I'm looking at the shapes that I'm drawing. I'm constantly looking at the shapes that I want to draw and the subject matter. I can see that this is the edge of the pot that comes down here, so I can use that drop line. Yeah, I've ended up putting my champagne cooler too low. So here again, just working with the fact that I know which side needs to be shaded from the light. Adding some of those in there. Coming to my edge, seeing my edge here. Some good darkness back in here. I can make this disappear right into here. Same thing up in here. Great value up in here. Then I can see some of the shapes. And these are just shapes. And I've got to be careful where I put my gear because it changes the reflections. Now that I've moved my some of my gear, I can see the reflections a little better. And I can come back in. See how that shape aligns itself with the top of the bucket and how it completes the top of those details. Continuously looking at my object to make sure that I'm not just making it up as I go along. I want to show the viewer what I see. So you see just a couple of quick shapes around the highlights that I saw. Come down in here. Here are my grapes. Each grape's got its own shadow and maybe a cast shadow. Got to take a look at it to see. There are some highlights on the grapes, and some are in darkness. So some of them I won't see a whole lot. Then here's that grape leaf. And it has a shadow cast across it right down the middle. So right down the middle, there's my cast shadow, because that shadow is coming from somewhere important. Another leaf over here. Maybe I can't see a whole lot of it. Maybe that'll just be an abstract pile over there. Who knows? Get my darkest darks down in here. Some good darks. Try to follow the pattern of the fabric underneath. See how I've gotten all that graphite here in this darker area. As it comes forward, I can add more contrast. Although this is a high contrast piece, because it's in that shadow box with that cast shadow, forgot what I was saying. You can get your darks in. See, it's very delicate up towards the edges. I can get my make sure my contour stays. Oh, as it gets darker with the contrast, generally what happens is more and more contrast and darker as the objects move towards you. It's a trick with perspective that will allow you to have objects appear to be closer because we can see more detail, opposed to as when they move away we can't see the detail. So you see I'm just putting in some contour lines. I'm going to decide how much darkness from behind I want to include. There's some variation in the in the cloth back behind it. I can have it just gradually turn into that darker area, sharpen up some of my lines, and then out here where I'm not in that cast shadow, in that shadow box, I don't have to back it with the that dark, but I still get some great lines, some great value over here, some really dark darks. I'm going to have that highlight down it, which is just a shape. Come around here with all the shapes that you see in that reflection. You can go ahead and draw them. For the sake of not making the video 2 hours long, I'm going to try to not do that. Again, some shapes, some highlights. Watching my highlight, where does it go? Exaggerate some of the details. Here's my pepper. This is that edge of the wicker basket that goes straight out into darkness. Very dark back in here. Try to even that out some. Get it to blend. And you see how I've gradually brought up my darkness. I didn't jump straight into it with my number 2 pencil. As I went along, I shaded. That eliminates the possibility of that graphite buildup that I was telling you about that I hate so much with straight graphite. So I'm going to draw in some of the details here. Try to keep this crisp here. This has got great light on it. And straight down through here's got great light on it. I'll pick out some of my shadows. This is my potato. Super dark down below the potato. Back in here is dark. This is just a shape. Darken up that shape. I'm getting graphite all over my hand because I drew in my lower right hand of my page. But that's the way it goes. So here's the front of my basket, and it actually wants to come out here some more, which is fine with me. I'm kind of happy with that. I can actually take my eraser to it here, Not too bad. Really, to get up right on top of that mark and get it a good crisp edge. And use my eraser shield and get up there. Now I've still got my 2B, and this is what my shadow looks like. If I squint and look at the edge of my basket, that's what my shadow looks like. And then all of this is in shadow. And I can bring it around kind of in the contour of the basket. Make sure my shadow connects, which it does. Double check my stuff in my basket. I've got this here. This is part of an onion that's gonna need its own light source. Here it is popping out from behind the pepper. And as I draw that, the negative space of the onion completes the edge of the pepper. And again, completing the edges of a few things. Here's the shadow for the corn. See if I can get a couple kernels of corn going on here for you. And they're darker, so I'm using my 2B just where they're going to be super dark. And this is the time where I would draw in, maybe just sort of get some good lines this way to have it look like an ear of corn, right? We'll get the kernels going the right way. Then we can kind of outline them according to their light source. And if it doesn't look like it's working out, we can stop and try something else. Hopefully this will look like an ear of corn, right? So I'm taking my number 2 pencil and I'm just going on the side of the kernel that would have its shadow. And I'll see if that produces enough of a look of a corn for me. Up here is some shadow. There's a shape here. Some shapes in here. This is the husk of the corn. That corn needs some help. So I am going to have to individually draw in all that corn. Let's see, I just need to get enough of it on there that it looks like corn to me. Maybe it already looks like corn to you. A little bit of a husk in the back. And here's the back of the basket. That darkness of that corn husk. That comes down in there. And then underneath here is the bottom. You see I just drew that shape in there. And here's another shape. I'm going to leave that there for some highlight. I see the highlights continue. I'm going to continue them, let them continue down in here. And that will be the bottom of my picture. And then I'll concentrate a little bit here on the top. A couple of highlights that I see that I didn't put in before. A couple of reflections. Double check where my shadows and values need to be darker. Again, if you want to create the illusion of something coming closer to you, you can create some value up close or here down towards the bottom of your drawing, and it will help it bring it forward. Right now I'm starting to blend the last of my blending before I move into a 4B, which is going to be a pretty dark pencil. So down here is going to be, should be my darkest darks. Work that in. Make sure my shadow looks that way, and you can see how that pulled it straight up for us. It just brought it forward. because it's the darkest spot on the page. All right, it's going to go to that spot too. So there's the 2B, and then we'll finish up with a 4B. Okay, so now that we've got our lights established by starting with a very light pencil, and we did our 100 line technique, and we're up to our 4B now, which is a very dark pencil. So any line that I put down with this pencil, I could pretty much assume I'm not going to cover up. This is down. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start to bring out my darks. Move my page around very lightly. Very lightly fill in the rest of those. Any spot where that dark needs to be brought up just a little bit, blend it into the background. Get rid of some of my pencil marks. Very lightly. Right to the edge of my objects. And then this is where I'm going to get in with some really dark darks. So I have to be careful. I'm going to be doing some contour of all the shapes that I see. Double checking my shapes. Checking my darkest darks. Just putting in a couple of real nice highlights and concentrating on the shadowed side of my subject, the side that is away from the light. You can see that I'll draw a line on the opposite side of the light source and then blend it back in. This will help establish my light source. And get a couple of eyes on my potato maybe. Make sure that it looks like a potato. A couple of shadows. Take a look at the texture of my onion. See, that's just a shape. That shape should have been in there earlier, but I'll put it in with my 4B now that I've got the 4B out. And then this darker pencil also allows me to come in over top of what I've already drawn. See some more shadow in here. More and more shadow as it gets away from the light source until it's finally that dark, dark, dark. Bring up a good shadow here, out front, right down front so that the audience can see, right? Touch up my grapes a little. The pepper's got a little shadow. This is where I see the most darkness, up underneath my candelabra. Maybe smear some in with my finger, see that? A couple techniques there. A little bit of this going on. Sure, why not? Touch up a little more over here. Sit it back, take a couple looks at it. It's a shadow there, but it's not quite as dark as the rest of them. Ties it together, grounds my piece. And the corn, right? Okay. I'm just gonna put away my 4B, get out my 6B and touch it a couple of times, and that'll be done. My 6B is my darkest dark, and it's really just for a couple of these. It's a really nice instrument once you get it working right. Really bring out some good darks. Not too many. Just like that. Call me if you've got any questions, comments, or concerns. Email me your piece if you want me to review it. I'll send out this video with a couple of stills that you'll be able to look at. And hopefully we'll continue with our critiques. I'm not here in class to go around the room and critique for you. If you'd like to send me a picture of what you're working on, I'll take a look at it and tell you what I think and what might need to be improved, and hopefully we'll all be well. So stay well. Email me, call me, or text me if you need to. Thanks. Bye-bye.